A writer in his natural habitat. In front of my laptop, a cup of coffee, and dressed in Johnny Depp cosplay. Happy NaNoWriMo readers, and welcome to the first installment of Readus Rites. Every Wednesday over the course of this November, I'm going to talk to you about my writing process, my thought process, literary devices and techniques that I use in the course of my writings, and things that I've learned along the way. And the topic of this video, by popular demand of my Twitter account, is the concept of the Trilogy Rule. Now with that being said, what I'm going to share with you today can be looked at as guidelines. You don't necessarily have to do this in your writing. I just personally like the concept of the Trilogy Rule, or Trilogy Effect, I guess would be a better term for it, because it's not necessarily a rule. However, I was introduced to this concept, like I said in my first Readus Relives video, through the Scream trilogy. And what I learned was this. The Trilogy Rule / concept is always applied in the final installment of a series. And since we're talking about trilogies, that means it's always applied in the third installment. However, what separates the third installment from the second installment / sequel is this. Unlike the second installment / sequel of the first installment, the third / final installment always connects back to the first. And this can be done in multiple ways. The two most popular versions, the plot device and the plot twist. Well, Laron, how exactly do you connect the third piece to the very first piece? And in what way? How would you declare it a plot device then? Hold on, I'm getting to that. See, a plot device is anything that can move the plot forward. And if it's a really good plot device, you won't look at it as if the writer just pulled this out of his ass at the last minute. No, if done correctly, the writer can ease the plot device in, and it makes sense, fits the tone of the story, and doesn't throw the reader off at all. And doing this with the trilogy, taking something from the first installment and introducing that information in a new way in the third installment, you'll be able to pull it off without a hitch. Here are some prime examples of how to use the Trilogy Rule / concept as a plot device. Because sometimes plot devices can be used as characters as well. For example, Vincent Corleone from The Godfather Part 3. He's the offspring of Sonny Corleone and Lucy Mancini, aka that chick that you saw Sonny bang in the beginning of Godfather Part 1. By seeing that interaction in the first movie, and then being introduced to Vincent in the third movie, you can probably put two and two together by saying oh, that was probably when he was conceived. Okay, that makes sense. That explains the reason why he's here. A lesser known example, but pretty popular because of the cult following that it has, is Marshall from the Hangover Part 3. Now, we don't see Marshall in any of the first two movies, but we hear about Marshall in the first one by Black Doug, played by Mike Epps. The Wolfpack never saw Marshall in the first one. They only heard about him through Black Doug. When they're reintroduced to Black Doug in Part 3, they remember him talking about Marshall when Marshall was introduced to the franchise, who then puts them on the adventure that they go through over the course of the movie. Then we have the use of the Trilogy Rule as a plot twist. And what a plot twist is a radical change in the direction of the plot over the course of the story. The same use of taking facts and information from the first installment and applying it into the third installment can also be used as ways of changing the plot not only for the third installment but for the entire series overall. Perfect examples. Darth Vader is Luke Skywalker's father. This was hinted at in Empire Strikes Back, but confirmed in Return of the Jedi. The concept of the One is basically the machine's way of looking over the fact that it's basically a Masigno they can't get rid of, as a way of pressing the reboot button on the human beings that have been unplugged, so that they won't harm their ecosystem of gathering energy. This was introduced to us in The Matrix Reloaded and confirmed to us in The Matrix Revolutions. And of course we have the plot twist that introduced me to the concept of the Trilogy Rule through the Scream trilogy. Sidney Prescott had an illegitimate brother back when her mother used to be a Hollywood movie star that convinced her boyfriend Billy Loomis to kill Maureen Prescott and frame Cotton Weary for the crime, thus putting the plot of the entire film franchise in motion. That was revealed to us in Scream 3. And of course, there are plenty of trilogies that don't adhere to this rule. The Lord of the Rings trilogy, the Alien trilogy, because we don't speak of that fourth movie. The fucking Iron Man trilogy doesn't adhere to these rules, but it's still great, and that's the point. Whereas these rules/guidelines for how to craft a trilogy add great ways to flesh out and expand your plot, it's not necessary. Not every trilogy, not every story, not every series needs a plot twist like that. And that's fine. These are just my favorite and personal go-tos whenever I'm constructing a 3-part story or something like that. Because I love things to connect, and I love being able to change the status quo in a way that makes sense and still be entertaining to my readers. So your homework assignment for the day. Write in the comments section below your favorite plot twist or plot device that you've seen in either a book series, a movie series, comics, anything. And like I said before, expect a new Readus Rites every single Wednesday over the course of this month. Next Wednesday, we're going to talk about how important music is in the writing process, at least for me. Can't really say the same for everybody else. Everybody else has their personal preferences of how they like to write, but I need something to fill my ear holes that's not sexual unless the scene calls for it. I've said too much. But this has been Readus 101. Class dismissed.